Great evening, great evening. Welcome to the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group, April edition. I am El Presidente himself, Shadidi Laser, and it's going to be a great evening. Thank you all for tuning in. We have, as I mentioned before we went live on the broadcast, we have people, experts, specialists all across the Microsoft diaspora tuning in. We have Toronto, we have Miami, we have Alexandria, VA, Germantown, Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, Cary, North Carolina, Brunswick, Maryland, all tuning into the broadcast. If you have not shared where you're tuning in from, then make sure you use the comments in order to do so. Now I'm going to go into the announcements for this meeting, but I thank you to all of our streaming partners who allow us to share our message of making Microsoft technology accessible to all. And so thank you for streaming live this evening and allowing us to spread our message. And I'm going to go briefly into the BSPUG story before we welcome our featured guest for the evening. So, okay. So, what is Baltimore SPUG? Now, Baltimore SharePoint Users Group was established in calendar year 2007. Now, the story goes, we were established during a time where right before Microsoft SharePoint became the fastest selling and highest selling server platform in Microsoft's history. We were also geographically located right outside of the world's #1 Microsoft SharePoint market, which is Washington, DC. Why is it the #1 market in the world at that time? Is because of the, let's say, amount of licenses sold within, let's say, healthcare, within government agencies, within educational institutions, so on and so forth. So those industries, which in other cities and states may be, let's say, educational, may be, let's say, a high concentration of universities in certain states, and maybe healthcare may have, or defense in others. But within this region, which is DC, Northern Virginia, those all intersect. And so during this time, there was limited resources in terms of the tech net and the blogs, and the social media communities did not have that cohesiveness that you see today. So user group communities were often the place where people would gain their insight and knowledge. And so during that time, Microsoft's Eric Harlan and I decided to start a community to solve those problems. And so Baltimore SharePoint Users Group was born. And so every third Thursday of the month since 2007, we have held a meeting. There's been no gaps within that time. It's one of the most consistent things that I've done in my life. And so the only time we don't have a meeting on the third Thursday of the month is the third Saturday of the month, which is our annual SharePoint Saturday one-day event. And so SharePoint Saturday is the opportunity for, let's say, people to connect with the technical thought leaders who have written the books, the blog posts, so on and so forth. And it's done in a way where the speakers, the experts, come off of the mountain and connect through, let's say, lunchtime events, and after, which is known as Share Pint, and which is a social event. And so it's a great way for organizations to get access to free training. It's a one-day conference, as I mentioned. So we are Maryland's longest focused Microsoft focused community institution, been around, like I said, since 2007. And I went back and looked at the numbers, and 2,100 plus professionals have been trained and or certified through resources shared within BSPUG. And so, and one of the things I'm most proud of is when someone comes to BSPUG and maybe they were laid off, maybe they, let's say, were self-employed and they met other members and formed a practice. And there's been 6 Microsoft practices, Microsoft partners that have started within our membership, and 3 of which have gone on to sponsor our annual conference at an elite tier. So nothing is better than to see people take the resources and go to the next level. Very proud of that. Now, special thanks to ProObject. Now, before times of working remote and shutdowns, we held our meetings monthly at ProObject in Hanover, which has been ranked as one of the top 100 places to work in the great state of Maryland. And so please, if you are seeking opportunities, please send your resume to tmstaley@proobject.com and discuss your qualifications and what you may be looking for in terms of opportunities. Like I said, special thanks to ProObject and their support of the user group. When we return to in-person meetings, we will return to ProObject. So we're located 1 mile away from the Maryland Live Casino, which is on Arundel Mills Boulevard. So close to DC, close to Baltimore, close to Columbia, centrally acceptable or accessible, excuse me. Now, with contracts ending and job cuts and people having to redefine and pivot, all of the buzzwords that we've heard during the past 2 years, we've come up with some ways to help our members. And so the golden rule goes like this. With a user group, any user group, most of them are held in the evening. So the theory is that if you're coming to a user group meeting, you're going above and beyond in order to learn, advance yourself, so on and so forth. So we acknowledge the fact that you're coming from somewhere, whether you're working during the day, whether you're working with employees, clients, searching for a job, whatever the case may be. So when you come to our meetings, we don't like to sales pitch you to death. And so even with our in-person meetings, there are hundreds of recruiters that would love the opportunity to tell you all the jobs that they have available. And so, but we choose not to go in that direction because you're there to learn, not to be sold. So, but that does not mean that the opportunities do not exist. So the golden rule is if you are going through a layoff, you think that you need to make a change in any way, please send your resume to hello@mrshadid.com. And what we'll do is you will receive a resume and career review session with one of our career partners through July 1st, 2022, complimentary resume and career review session that includes LinkedIn. So use this to your advantage, because there's no way that if you're driving somewhere to learn after you're done working, that you should be out of work for a prolonged period of time, when our user group is a hub for employment and opportunity in the Microsoft space in this region, and have been so for well over a decade. So please email your details, and we'll discuss that offline. Now, like I said, 6 talented people have gone on to launch practices starting in our user group, but maybe you would be 7, 8, 9, and 10. We have a partnership with SCORE, which is the nation's largest network of certified business mentors, and of which within Greater Maryland, there are 6 regional offices or 6 offices throughout the region. And what SCORE does is they provide free business planning for people who want to start their own businesses. So maybe you are a rock star developer and you want to build an application and sell it to the government. Maybe you want to do government contracting. Maybe you want to start your own firm. Your talent alone will not get you there. You have to understand the ins and outs of business. In SCORE, you get assigned a mentor. They also have an online resource library, which is one of the most robust that you can find regarding or related to business. So go to greaterbaltimore.score.org and take advantage of these resources. Next, call for speakers. Now, you can come to the user group meetings and listen to me discuss what I'm happy and passionate about regarding Microsoft technology each month, or in the spirit of variety, you can step to the stage and develop your skill set of speaking. I can tell you that speaking in front of audiences has been one of the most rewarding experiences throughout my career. It's helped me in so many ways. And with our group, it's not necessary that you deliver a 70-minute or 60-minute presentation. Break fix can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Lessons learned, meaning I deployed this at my company and this is my key takeaway. I thought it was going to be this easy, but I learned 5 extra things that I want to share with you guys. And so, or you can say, well, I'm going to speak at SP Fest next month, and I need the BSPUG audience to fine tune my presentation and step to the stage, and we'll critique it in a supportive way, of course. And so call for speakers is open. And so if you're interested in delivering a topic, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to work with you on developing your presentation, as well as finding the appropriate month where we have openings for speakers. I know going into our next opening is June 2022. And so let's get you in there to deliver a topic. And now, without further ado, I bring to the stage an award-winning, certified technical trainer and content creator who specializes in Microsoft 365 apps and services. This gentleman trains corporate clients on a wide range of Microsoft 365 topics, which include Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and the Power Platform. This individual has authored several Microsoft 365 focused books, including the M365 certification exam. This gentleman, he blogs regularly at natechamberlain.com, oftentimes a guest speaker around the country at various conferences, events, user groups. He has hopped on a plane from the show me state, Kansas City, Missouri, and traveled to Maryland to speak at our SharePoint Saturday Baltimore event. And I bring to the stage the one, the only, Nate Chamberlain.
Awesome. Thank you, Shadid. Appreciate it. How's it going?
Life is good. Life is good.
Good. All right. I've got my camera ready, but it says you have to enable it. So if you'll do that, I'll go ahead and put my face on here.
All right. Let's see what we got here. Give me one moment. Let's see. One moment. I have to find you in the lineup here. Give it 2 seconds. Okay, give it a try.
All right. Just
hey,
like
looks
All
like
right.
Nate. Now, I'm going to get off camera. Share your screen, work your magic. I'll be in the chat moderating. And so, ladies and gents, the Nate Chamberlain is in the building. Enjoy.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. It's nice to get to join BSPUG again. It's a great group and I always have a good time. So looking forward to introducing you to the visualize the list feature for any Microsoft list. Of course, that's a Power BI integration, biggest words on the screen right now. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions too. So as we're going through, feel free to use the chat, or if you want to hold on to them until the end, that's fine too, whatever you're comfortable with. All right. So again, yeah, my name is Nate. I do lots of stuff. Shadid gave me a really nice welcome, so I won't talk anymore about myself, but happy to be here. All right. So with that, I'm a big demo person. I like to jump straight into it and just show you kind of what we're dealing with. So give me one moment here. Let's look. All right, so tonight, just so you know, I'm going to be acting in a fictional account, so everything you see is completely fake. No worries about sensitivity with the data here. And I'm acting as someone named Megan Bowen. So Megan is a marketing manager for a company called Contoso Electronics, and she has access to all kinds of things on Microsoft 365. Now, I know most people in this group are probably familiar with at least parts of Microsoft 365, but tonight we're going to be focusing specifically on 3 apps. We've got Microsoft Lists, we've got SharePoint, and of course, Power BI. So if you're unfamiliar with any of those, I hope you'll have a better understanding, maybe just a little bit even, of all 3 of them by the time we're done here. So starting out with SharePoint, and by the way, I just went to office.com as Megan, and that's my favorite place to go. I tell people in all of my trainings, it's kind of like your virtual desktop, right? And when you go there, you have your recent files, you've got your apps over here on the left, and the app launcher in the upper left is kind of like your other start menu, right? So when Megan clicks on that, she sees popular apps that she works with, or recent files, or she can click on all apps and see everything. So anyway, that's my brief office.com plug, and then we're going to go into SharePoint. All right, so here we are on the SharePoint start page. So this is where Megan's going to go and find sites that she's a member of that she can add list data, she can add documents, and communicate and collaborate within her group and across the entire organization. So we're going to start out first just kind of looking at the lay of the land. And there's a specific site that Megan's working on right now called the Mark8 project team. So we're going to go out there. All right, so again, those of you who are brand new to SharePoint, maybe haven't used it much, this is just kind of like a website-like experience that Megan and her teammates are using to collaborate. So right here on their homepage, they're dragging and dropping tasks, they're completing those, so on and so forth. But you can see it's very engaging, right? It's interactive. Everybody can add documents, open those up, edit them, so on and so forth. And then down here at the bottom, a beautiful example of a report being embedded from Power BI to a SharePoint page. And it's fully interactive. All right, so we kind of got the idea. SharePoint's kind of like website-like experiences. All right, moving on. So this particular site has a lot of different content on it, and tonight we're going to be focusing on lists. Now, lists are one of the core building blocks of SharePoint. I'd say another big one are libraries. Some of you may be using SharePoint primarily for document storage at this point. So tonight you'll get another building block or one of those major components that might make you think, maybe we could use that instead of Excel for a certain thing, or maybe we could track stuff better in a list than we could in our current method. So on Megan's site here, she has a list called parts and spec list. So let's look at that. All right, beautiful. All right, so at face value, this isn't a very exciting list. And I know that may be small, so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit there. But on its face value, yeah, there's not a lot going on here. We see some text, some more text, and more text, right? So just a quick intro to things that Megan can do without using Power BI. She could, maybe find a specific, let's see, a category here. Let's go with the requester. All right. So if she drops down any of these column headers in this list, she can, without having to use Power BI or anything, create a grouping and say, oh, okay, I've got 4 items from Adele, 1 for Alex, 2 for Alan. We'll go ahead and collapse those and you see the full list. So she's kind of able to create, in a way, her own really quick report just by dropping down a column header and choosing group by, right? She gets these high level counts, can expand one category and really drill down to the level she's interested in. Okay, so that's the requester grouping. And whenever you're doing these kinds of things in SharePoint, it's temporary until you use the view menu and then save view as. And let me move my face there. So yeah, you can use the view menu up here and then save that view as something like grouped, oops, not all caps, grouped by requester. There we go. So in a way, Megan now has her all items kind of generic view, right? And she just created a new view that she and all of her teammates can use called grouped by a requester. So we're going to take that same concept and we're going to take it to the next level. It's nice that we can create these views and we can go into lots of detail on this if anybody has any questions, but there's a lot you can do just with SharePoint. But what about when you want visual data? You want charts, you want line charts, bar charts, doesn't matter, high level summary detail, all of that. Well, luckily, they've just recently added within the last year or so, I want to say it was last July, it rolled out to all people on a standard license here. But anyway, up at the top here, we've got a couple options where you can now integrate directly with Power BI service. Now, tonight when I'm talking about Power BI, I'm only talking about the Power BI service. So before we go any further, quick differences there. On your computer, you may have an app called Power BI Desktop. All right, we'll go ahead and open that up and take a look. There we go. So it may look like this, and some of you may have used Power BI before, and this looks very familiar. This is not the Power BI service, though. This is just Power BI Desktop. It's an app that you can use to connect to data, model that data, visualize it, and then ultimately publish it to the Power BI service. So think of the Power BI service as kind of the final destination for your reports. And so what we're doing in SharePoint is we're actually skipping to that final step, right? We don't need to open up an app on our computer. We don't need to do any heavy lifting with the data. We just do it right from the SharePoint list, click a couple buttons here and there, and we're done. So we'll skip all of that with the app. But again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to drop those. And we're just gonna start with a quick demo, and then I'll kind of step back a little bit and we'll look at it in more detail. All right, so again, up at the top, we've got automate and integrate. So it could be under either. Just logically, we might think, oh, I want to automate, and I want to create an automatic report. So that's not what this is, though. Some handy features here we could talk about if you're interested, but we're actually going to go to integrate. So if you're looking for it, just remember, oh, it's a Power BI integration. Okay, so integrate, Power BI, and then of course, while we're here tonight, visualize the list. So I'll click on that. And I might just have to wait a little bit. Oh, I didn't have to wait at all. That was really fast. So just so you know that the larger your data set, this could take a little bit longer than what you just saw on my screen. It has taken longer before with the same data set, so it can be kind of variable as well. Yeah, so you just click that button and boom. I don't know, I mean, I don't have to know how to build these charts. I don't have to know, where it's all kind of coming from or how to construct it, because it's using AI to do a lot of that for me. Now, of course, you do need to understand your data, and you need to be able to look at these auto-generated graphics and see if it's actually telling an accurate story. So for example, we might start in the upper left here and see, oh, they made a sum of request amount dollars by on track. So is the project or is the part on track or not? A yes or no, and then a lot of blanks, right? And then we're looking at the request amounts for each of those categories. Okay, that probably makes sense. Maybe it's a useful graphic. And then in the upper right-hand corner, sum of request amount dollars by strategic initiative. So same idea, but instead of by on track, we're looking at the specific strategic initiatives and their dollar amounts, right? So you kind of get the idea. We just want to verify the data that it's showing here, right? This is telling a story. We just want to make sure it's being truthful. Now in the lower left-hand corner, what I really like is that it actually gives you sentence data stories as well. So you can see it constructed at 480,000, had the highest sum of request amount dollars and was 327% higher than no, which had the lowest sum of request amount dollars at 112. Well, that's cool. They just kind of digested it all and then gave us the little summary there. All right, so some nice graphics. Now, let's say you want to make some changes. For example, again, with no Power BI knowledge, you may know that you're missing something here. For example, maybe I want to see more date-based data, right? I'm not seeing a date axis here or here. I do see a year axis down here, or year and month actually. But if I check this box over here on the far right where it says your data, and I check the box for rollout date, watch what happens. Ooh, all right. So now it's incorporating more date data here. So I can see I used to have, I don't even remember which one it was. One of these was here before. Now I have another one. Okay, so we kind of get what that does. I'm going to uncheck that. Let's do the same thing with requester. Maybe I want to see more data about requesters. In fact, I don't see them listed anywhere here right now. So I check requester and ooh, now this is interesting. I can see the sum of the request amount by requester. That might be the most valuable thing in this particular data set, right? I can see that Emily is our #1 dollar amount requester, it looks like, requesting the most, followed by Isaiah closely. Tells a really clear story that's closely aligned with my data. All right, so it's simple that it's like that simply by checking and unchecking. So we'll go ahead and take off one, we'll take off on track. We don't need the yes, no's. And now it's recalibrated. I'm giving more real estate to the more important data. Notice my requester and the request amount got a big chunk now. Okay, so let's say you're happy with this. At this point, maybe this was just for you and you're done. Maybe you take a screenshot, maybe you save it somewhere, post it in an email message or a Teams message. Totally up to you at this point. But if you want to share it with others where they can interact with it and kind of manipulate it, click around on it. For example, if I want to filter by those that are on track, I click on that bar and I get this nice filtered view or this highlighted view of that data, right? So that's really nice to be able to give that interactivity, better than a screenshot, right? So I'll unclick that so it's back to where it was. And now let's publish it. So in the upper left-hand corner, notice there's a button that says publish to the list. So whenever you're using this feature, visualize the list and you click on publish to the list, it saves it literally in the list. Okay, keep that in mind as I pivot to Power BI, again using Megan's app launcher. You're going to tell I'm kind of biased towards going to office.com. All right, so this is the Power BI service. Now, the Power BI service is super powerful, of course. It collects all of the reports that you're publishing from Power BI desktop. And you can actually create reports here too. Once you start publishing, you're going to be publishing data sets along with finished reports. They come kind of separately, but they're connected, of course. So from there, you could say, hey, I just published a report on that last month. So rather than publish a whole new one, I can just connect to that existing data set and build a different report. That's what this pick a published data set is. And then on the left, notice you can also paste or manually enter data. You don't need Power BI desktop if you can just copy from Excel and paste in here. So those are two quick ways to get started just in Power BI service. Now, what's not going to happen with the SharePoint list that we're working on, it's actually not going to publish here. When we go to, let's say, recent, or we go to the home page, or if I go down to my workspace or our shared workspaces, these SharePoint list visualizations that I'm publishing now actually don't get collected here. We're not going to find them here. The only place they're going to live is on the list itself. Okay. So keep that in mind, and then I'm going to go find that report somewhere. There it is. And then up at the top, I'm going to click on that publish to the list, give it a name that's very clear to me and everybody else. So I might say, let's see, request dollar by requester, because that's my primary focus maybe. And then I publish. Okay. Excuse me. All right, so now we can see my title up at the top stuck. That's good. And I can see it was last updated on the 21st. Perfect, that's today, that makes sense. All right, and then I can also expand that just by clicking on it, and I can see a specific time. So why am I taking time showing you this? Obviously, over time, you're going to be updating data in that SharePoint list. You might change a requester, add a new one, delete old data, so on and so forth. And this may be published today, but it's going to automatically refresh. So I think the time, we'll look again as we're wrapping up here later, but I think the time is 3 hours. So every 3 hours, it's going to go to that list, pull in the latest items, and give you a fresh report, right, with the most recent data, and you don't have to do a thing. All right, so we know that the last refresh was 3:39 in the specific time zone. So, all right. So let's go ahead. We're going to go back to the list. Now that we know we published it, we should be safe, theoretically, just closing the tab. So I'll close the tab. I'll go back to, this was the list. I'll do a quick refresh. I just like to do that myself. And then let's check to see if that report stuck. So up at the top, after you've started publishing reports, they're all going to be collected in the same place that you go to create them. So we'll go back to integrate, we'll go to Power BI, and then now notice I've got my brand new report, request dollars by requester. I'll click on that. Or my teammates click on that, right? And boom, there's that report. I can still make changes to it just like I could before. I could even expand this filter pane if it was published with any, but there we go. So pretty painless to get started, right? Now let's think about the more heavy duty stuff, right? Because this is a great start, but what if you want to really change the data, right? You want to get different visuals, you want different colors. This isn't always going to be everybody's cup of tea. So you'll notice up at the top, there is an edit button. There's also delete, right? So if you're done with this or it was a mistake, delete it. But we just want to improve it. So we're going to choose this edit button, right? And then it says when you switch to edit, will you lose the summarize pane? No big deal. We want that. All right. And then this next little segment here is actually going to be a bit of an introduction to creating reports in Power BI for those of you who've never done it. So up until this point, Megan didn't have to really know much about Power BI, right? She clicked on visualize the list, maybe chose some different columns of data to show and published it. So now let's look at this on track, right? Maybe instead of showing the sum of request amount by on track or not, including this odd blank category, right? Which really isn't telling us something useful. Maybe it would just be nice to see how many of these are on track, right? Maybe a pie chart would make sense with a simple yes, no like this. So when you select a visual, just by clicking on it in Power BI, you can go over to the visualizations pane and choose any other visual to switch to. So notice right now, clustered bar chart is what's selected. Let's change it to pie chart. Ooh, that looks nice. All right, so we've got this pie chart. We've got this blank category, which is still kind of not great. We've got this sliver for no and a bigger chunk for yes. All right, we're getting some nice percentages there and total amounts. Now this is telling a better story with this particular measure that I like more. Now I'm not done. So on each visual, there's going to be some things that you kind of want to filter out. So for example, you can probably guess the biggest one here is the blanks. Maybe in this particular case, I just want to see the yeses versus nos, and the blanks might be ones we haven't had a chance to get to, right? Maybe we haven't reviewed them yet. So including them here, maybe it's useful to see, oh, there's over 50% that we haven't touched. But maybe, again, my focus is just yeses and nos. So you'll notice in the filters pane here, you're going to see the columns that you're using in that visual. So I've got on track, it's showing all. Okay, so let's expand that. And then instead of showing all, I just want to see, let's see, the yeses and the nos. All right, there we go. That's telling the story that I want to tell. Okay, excuse me. So we've got a pie chart. We've got a couple clustered bar charts. Let's look at one more. So I'm going to come down here to the line chart that I have. Now with the line chart, we can do some pretty cool things. You can actually have more than one line on a chart. So for example, right now it looks like it's showing the sum of request amount. Okay, and it's showing the over year and month. So let's say instead of year and month, I'm going to take that out and I'm going to drag my date back into the axis here. And now I can go down to year, quarter, month, and day. So it chose 2 of those levels for me. I want all 4. Okay, now I'm also going to add in a legend here. We're going to use requester as our legend. Ooh, that's messy. Excuse me. Dry today. All right, so now looking at my line chart here, it's kind of messy. It's very small. So one thing I might consider is, do I need this chart? Could I move this chart? Is this pie chart taking up too much space? Probably. So you can resize all of these. So I'm going to make this pie chart about right there, and I'm going to drag this clustered bar chart up here. Don't judge me for my imperfections. I'm going to do my best. All right, and then I'm going to make this spot bigger, and then I'm going to make this visual bigger. Maybe, if it lets me. Takes a little bit of click magic. There we go. All right, so now I can read it a little bit better. Now, something to understand about Power BI when you're working with axes like this with year, quarter, month, and day is that when you first drop it in there, like I just did, notice it's starting at just the year level. I see 2017 and 2018. And there's only one person. If I hover, I can see that's Lynn. Lynn Robbins is the only one who had activity from 2017 to 2018. So when you want to go up and down in a hierarchy like this, you have these arrows up at the top. And again, this only works when you have a hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is choose one of these two last arrow options here. There's the separated arrows and then the joined arrows. If I choose the separated arrows, this is going to be trend data, where it's going to combine all of the periods across all the years. So this would be popular for those of you who are looking for, quarterly trends. When do we spike throughout the year between quarter 1, 2, and 3 across the last 10 years, right? Those kind of questions. Or what's generally our biggest day of the week, right? Those kind of things would be the separated arrows. Now the other one, actually, let me go down one more level so you can see month. A little more interesting, kind of sporadic, right? And then the other one is the joined arrows. Now this one keeps the separation of years. So instead of showing quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4 combined for both years, we'll just see 2017, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2018, however much data we have. Let's go down. There we go. We can see July 2017 going into April 2018. We'll go one more level, again, telling a different story now. This is more realistic time series data. All right, now I've tried this out. I see that I have too many requesters. You see I can keep scrolling over here to see the full legend, and it's just not working out for me. So I'm going to take that legend out and just leave it just like this, perhaps, right? Or maybe I have a legend that I could use that's just fewer categories, right? Maybe I want to do on track, right? We know there's only 3 options there, yes and no and blank. All right, so once again, maybe I like what I have now. I'm ready to republish to the list. So in the upper right-hand corner, I can publish to list and it's saved. I can go back, other people can use it, and we're good, right? So I won't go through all those steps again. So, when we're editing everything, there's a few other things you might consider. At the bottom, you'll notice that you have a single page to start with, but these pages that you're creating or these reports that you're creating automatically can actually have multiple pages. I'll create a second one, start blank, and maybe use my favorite visual, which is the ribbon chart. So just so you know, that's on the second row here. It kind of looks like thick bands or fettuccine, perhaps, kind of overlapping there. And just like with the line chart, I'm probably going to use date for my axis so I can show time series data. Maybe I take out day level and I'll just stick with year and quarter and month. And then let's put the request amount again for values. There we go. And I'm going to drill down a little bit. And maybe on this one, since I have a full page for it, I'll try my legend again. Ooh, all right, that looks a little nicer, right? So you can see, if you add multiple pages, you don't have to worry so much about cramming everything in one dashboard. Typically, whatever your page 1 is, should be like your highest level overview, and then you can create additional pages to kind of be like that deeper dive or that kind of visual specific focus, where this page is going to focus on people, right? And the next one's going to focus on money, right? But the top one should be your overall summary. All right, so now we've got 2 pages in there. Maybe I want to rename those. Excuse me, we'll do summary. We'll do people. All right. There we go. So I've got 2 pages on my report. I think that's good. Maybe I want to duplicate one and tweak it a little, but I won't. I'll just go ahead and publish. All right. So that's pretty much the whole process for visualizing a list. Excuse me, my goodness. For visualizing a list. All right, now there's more to it. So basically what you've seen so far is just visualizing an existing SharePoint list. Now, some of you may be looking at this and thinking, wow, I wish I could do it that easily with my Excel data, right? Or I wish I could do it with something that we're already working on, right? Rather than having to go find an existing list that may not be perfect. So I'm going to switch to a different site and I want to show you a full process. Remember, I said I wanted to step back and show you even more. So I'm going to another site that Megan has access to called Sales and Marketing. And on this particular site, she's got, there we go, it's our first time. She's got a list called Product List, and she could visualize that one, sure. But again, we're going to start fresh. So on her homepage of Sales and Marketing, we're going to click on New, List. And then using my example of, gosh, we have all this data in Excel. I want to be able to visualize that so easily. Now, of course, you can put charts in Excel, but how about the dynamic quality of Power BI, right? And just introducing that as another option. So I'm going to choose from Excel, and we're going to use a file that we just have saved on our site. I could use either one of these. The most important thing, though, is that you have a formatted table in the Excel file. That's all that's required. As long as you formatted your data as a table, you can proceed. So I happen to know that financial sample is formatted as a table. I'll click on next. And then it goes out to that table, or maybe I can choose a different table if you have multiple in there, but this one just has one. And then you just want to verify your column headers here. So for example, segment is showing government, mid-market. Okay, I can see that's kind of categorical, right? And right now it's using title. So one of the most confusing things for people learning this for the first time is, well, what's title and how is that different from single line of text? If you're familiar with SharePoint list, you know that every single list has a title column and you can't get rid of it. You have to have it. It's kind of the key, right? And it should always be the most unique data about a list. And in this particular list, I don't actually think we have a very good unique. Yeah, I'm just looking. Yeah, we don't really have much uniqueness when it comes to columns. So I'm going to leave that just as it is, right? But this could be like product ID, transaction ID, ticket number, those kind of things. All right, so then a country for this one, I might change that to something else. I'm not sure why I'm seeing multiple single lines of text. kind of strange. It might just be a bug in the demo environment. Who knows? Product, same thing. There is a choice that will show up sometimes. I might choose choice for that. See, discount band, we'll leave that alone. A number. Okay, so I've got number. I'll leave that as is. Manufacturing price, currency shows up sometimes. And I think that's what some of these single lines should be. It's just showing single line for some reason. So I'm not going to guess around on which one's which. We'll fix it later. All right, so then sales price, so on and so forth. I would change those to currency, go all the way to the end. And then maybe there's some that I don't need, like month number, month name, and year, because I have a date column. All right, so first of all, we'll change date to date and time. That looks better. And I'm not going to import month number, month name, or year, because I have it here, right? And Power BI is going to pull that out for me anyway. So I'll click on next. I'll just leave it as the Excel file name, financial sample, and click create. So really all I'm doing here is converting an Excel file to a SharePoint list so I can benefit from these really great features like Power BI integration in a couple clicks, right? It also has a lot of other benefits, and I know we're not here to learn about SharePoint, but there are a lot of other benefits to having data in SharePoint, like being able to share an individual row of data separately, being able to have a comment thread on one particular row of data, right? And there's a bunch of other stuff, incorporating with Power Automate in a much more powerful way than Excel allows. So I'll get off my soapbox, but there's a lot you could do. Now, what I'm not saying is that you should replace your Excel usage with SharePoint lists. There's a time and a place for both. Especially your massive data sets, leave those in Excel. SharePoint's really meant more for that collaborative purpose. And you can still have, I think it's up to 5,000, load really nicely in a view, and then you have to do some indexing and stuff in classic views. And then in your modern, you should be okay. But still, there's a little bit of performance issues depending on how massive your list is. All right, so it's just about there. Just so you know, this particular Excel file has 1,000 rows. So it just imported or created 1,000 items in SharePoint. All right, so from here, I've got my list. I'm just going to check it, make sure it's correct. I'm probably going to change a few things like profit. Since I couldn't do this before, I'm going to make that currency instead of number. There we go. And if anybody wants me to slow down or show this, just let me know. I'm just doing some SharePoint stuff here. And the reason I'm doing this, you may be asking, well, it's already a number. Isn't that good enough? Kinda, but when you put this in Power BI, it's going to be doing math with the $sign, right? And you want your charts to show that $sign. If you leave it as a number, it's just going to be like, average, sum, and it's going to kind of look weird, right? Without that currency symbol. All right, so just a few more. Thanks for bearing with me here. Make sure our data is clean before we move it in. And at this one, we don't want any decimal places. Can't sell a half unit, so I'm not sure why that's in there. Okay. All right. Unless it's Subway, I guess they sell 6 inches instead of foot long. So, all right. So I've got my data good to go. So I'm going to go a little quicker this time because you've already seen this, but I just want to show you how fast, just this evening in front of you, I was able to import an existing 1,000-row spreadsheet that me and my team were working on. And visualize it with Power BI. Now, I know the question comes up often, do I have to have that file in SharePoint already? Nope, you can upload a brand new one from a jump drive, from your desktop, from a shared network drive, and it'll be the same process pretty much. All right, so anyway, integrate Power BI, visualize the list. Let's see how fast this one is. There we go. Not too shabby, not too shabby. All right. Okay, so this one, very similar to the last, right? But this one, I'm not seeing any line charts. So it didn't assume that I wanted to see any time series data, it looks like. I see a lot of sums. Okay, I see only sums. So this one might take a little bit more cleanup, right? So you might choose something like the sum of discounts by product up here, and you might want to change it a little bit using, the edit capability I showed you. Or again, high level stuff, you just might uncheck and check some different columns. So maybe I want to include more date data. There we go. That's a nice sum of units sold by date, a little more helpful. Let's get in some, let's see, profits, nice to see. Ooh, very nice. All right, profit by date. All right. And again, it's just doing that automatically, right? I don't have to know Power BI. I just have to know what I want to see. Okay, so we'll edit one more time, just real quick. Right, and then I just want to show you, I mentioned colors earlier. If you don't like the colors that it's using out of the box, just these generic things, in addition to being able to change like the fields and everything, you'll notice you have a paint roller or a format icon for every visual. So if blue's not your jam, just click on that visual, click on the paint roller, and then we'll change our data colors to, let's say, ooh, this yellow here, perhaps. There we go. And we'll change this dark blue to pink. All right, that's more colorful. Okay, so that's just formatting. And you can do that for everything. And you'll notice that there's a lot more options than what I'm showing you tonight, just in the interest of time. But you can change how things are labeled, if that's too small, or if you want to change the fonts or anything, or the sizes, because these are kind of small fonts, right? Borders, shadows, all kinds of stuff. All right, so we can format it. We can change the fields that are shown. We can change the visuals that are used, right? We can create multiple pages. We can publish it back to the list for our whole team to benefit from. Okay, now one question that comes up sometimes is, can I combine this list with another list? Can I show both here? Unfortunately, with this visualize the list feature, it is list specific, so you can't. One thing I haven't tried though, for those of you who are interested in that, you could create a lookup column. So let me show you that real quick. If you add a column to your list as a lookup, you can connect to other lists on this site. So let's see, I've got the product list. I might choose a column like, let's see, well, title, that's fine. And then you can even include additional columns too. And you could try that and see if the visualization pulls in both that way. So just some food for thought there, something to take home as homework. So it is possible to connect lists, but as far as the integration of Power BI with this, might be a little trickier. All right, so I think, so I think we're pretty good with this SharePoint piece. A couple more notes on this. I know some people like to use Teams with SharePoint. So I want to show you an embedded list inside of Teams. Here we go. And unfortunately, right now, the integrate option that you get does not include Power BI. So when you go up to integrate, you'll notice just Power Apps. So just remember, if you are using lists inside of Teams, that you will need to go out to the full list experience. So you can just use the ellipsis up there and then open in SharePoint. There we go. Takes me to the full list. So in that case, we haven't visualized this one yet. All right. So let's move on. One more concept, one more big concept for you anyway. You may know that SharePoint has lists, right? Maybe you've been using those for years, but then recently, Microsoft rolled out this new product, if you will. It's not really new, but kind of a reimagined SharePoint list that now is a standalone app, right? And it's just called Microsoft List. And the biggest benefit to this is that now you don't have to have a whole SharePoint site or a team necessarily to have a list. You can have private list just for yourself. You can have personal lists. You don't have to even use your work account. You can just sign up with your Live/Hotmail or whatever it is these days account, and then create a receipt tracker, right? Or you can create a gift ideas list or something for your personal or family use. But you can also use those at work just for your private use, just by going to the Microsoft List app. It's just called List. And then up at the top, you can click on New List, use any of their templates. You start from Excel, just like I just showed you a little bit ago. Copy an existing list, which would be really helpful for those of you who maybe have cyclical projects where you need to just basically do the same thing every quarter or every year. Just copy last year's, right? That doesn't copy data, just so you know. I get that question a lot. But from existing list, just takes the structure and the columns and the views and all of that. All right, so down below, let's proceed with this example. I want to create a list for myself to just use kind of privately at work, right? So I'm going to choose this work progress tracker. I'm going to check out that template, make sure it looks good for me. I'm like, yeah, that could help me out. I'm going to use that template. Notice it's going to save to my list. So you could from here, from the list app, change that and say, oh, I want to put that on our shared sales and marketing site. But for me, I want it to be on my list. Okay, so it's private to me. I might give it a description. I won't today, and I'll click on create. Awesome, I have a blank list, very exciting. Now, if I click on new, I'll just go ahead and put in one item here. Testing, awesome. I'll do a category, great. Not started, that's fine. Okay, and a due date, just a couple more. Won't spend too long on this, I promise. I'm gonna assign this to Adele, who doesn't have access to this list. I work with her, but this is my list, right? And I'll click on save. So Adele doesn't get a notification, just so you know. There is no Power Automate flow set up on this list. There's no alerts set up for anything. This list is entirely private to me, but I was still able to use that people picker, right? Which is kind of nice. All right, so just like with SharePoint, this is going to be the most boring report you see all night, but I just want to show you, you can do it with your personal lists as well. So I go up to the top of my Microsoft list that's private to me. I click on that same integrate option, go to Power BI, visualize the list. This one should be the fastest. Oh, I said it, but now it's not going to be. And here's my extremely exciting report. But you can see, over time, as you're using that as your work progress tracker, that could be really helpful, right? Being able to visualize your personal work and show your productivity to your boss and be like, hey, here's all the stuff I've been working on, or here's all the tickets I've been able to close, or, here's all the things I've been assigned or the content that I've published. Like, we all have our own thing, right? And if you're using lists to track it, this is a great way to get a really quick snapshot to share or just to review. Reflection's really good, right? All right, so this other one over here has a few more rows. I'll just do the same thing because it's so easy, right? Just takes a few clicks. There we go. So this one had 4 in it. So I've got, this one was my expense tracker, and I can see, oh, okay, I'm spending most on my hobbies, looks like, and next is household, and then personal. Okay, all right. My printer ink is the most expensive. Yikes. And then descriptions are in there, probably not as helpful. So I might not use the description visual. And then amount by date. Where did my spending kind of peak, right? And you just do this, imagine over time, right? Just edit in grid view. You're like, hey, I went to the pet store and I got some cat food. I did that today. It was $100 because it's very fancy food. And we'll put it under food. Cat food is food. And we'll say meow. There we go. So I just added an item and I'm done for today, right? Maybe I come back the next day, add another item, or maybe I like that form better and I'll click on new and fill it out that way, attach my receipt, right? So anyway, imagine just over time, you're just slowly doing that, spending a few seconds here and there, but then having that ability to be like, hey, accountant, check this out. Responsible financial management. All right, so I know we have a question here. Let me check. Oh, nope, just a comment. Love the functionality. Definitely. Yeah, it's super helpful. All right, so let's talk a little bit about limitations real quick. Here we are. So basically, to get to the visualize the list option, you don't have to have any special licensing or anything. You can just go to integrate, click on Power BI, visualize the list, and boom, you've got that. You can change the columns just like I did and choose what you want to see there. And you can take a screenshot, right? And you've got your nice visual. That requires no additional licensing. However, here's the important part. Once you want to start editing that, like going into that full edit experience where I could switch the visuals and where I could publish it to the list for other people to use, that's when you need a Power BI Pro license. I'm not a licensing expert, so I can't tell you what you have. So you're going to have to talk to your admins to see what you already have. But if you're able to publish, that's your clue that you're licensed appropriately. If you can do it, you've got it. If you can't do it, you probably don't have it. So you can kind of test for yourself. And then also, if you have, I think it's the E5 licensing, that includes Power BI Pro, but just because you have E5 at work, your admin still may not have licensed you for Power BI Pro, even though it's included. So it's worth asking just to say, hey, do we have that? Because it may not be an additional cost. It may just be they need to assign you one of the licenses that were included. Now, other licenses don't include it, so it is an add-on, and I think don't quote me, but I think it's $10 per person per month. So it's accessible price-wise. And again, if you have a use for it, if you're tracking data in SharePoint lists or Microsoft lists, you've got a good case to ask for it, right? All right, so that's one barrier just to keep in mind. Might not be an issue for a lot of you. But then the next one, I was right on the 3 hours. Yes. So every 3 hours that data will refresh. So that's another thing to keep in mind, especially as you start training your teammates. And you're like, hey, I put this report out there, but it's not live. So make sure they click on the top of the report. I'll show you that one more time here too. On a published one, I'm sure I have one up here. There we go. So make sure they click on the top bar here to get the last updated time. And they can see specifically, oh, it was 3:39. That's why I don't see the one that I submitted, right? Or that's why that looks so off. So only once every 3 hours. All right, and then here we are. So your guest users can't use this feature. So if you do add guests, like, I don't know, Nate at Centric maybe is going to be a guest on your SharePoint site. I can go and view your list. I can help you work on your list, but I can't actually use the integrate/visualize the list feature. Okay, and the last one here is your admin can disable the feature. Excuse me. And it's just maybe a governance thing sometimes, like when new features are rolled out, sometimes admins are told to lock those down until they can be fully evaluated. So it's not necessarily we'll never have it. It's just maybe for right now, we're going to lock that down. Now, I know I'm speaking to some admins tonight, so I want to just show you real quick. If I go into my admin center, which I might be able to get there quicker this way. There we go. All right. And then I always forget where it is. Let's see. There's so many things here. It might actually be just right here on the tenant settings. Integration, there it is. All right, so it is on the first category here, tenant settings, and it's called integration with SharePoint and Microsoft List. Right now I can see from Megan's organization that the admin, Megan, has enabled this for the entire organization. So if you want to turn it off, blanket, just turn it off, right? One single click and you click apply, and then that option isn't available for people. Now, you can also apply it to specific groups. So this is really smart because in organizations where you are paying per user and it's not included with your existing license, you may want to do a training program, right? And say, hey, we're going to license people for Power BI Pro, but we have to pay per person. So we want to make sure you know what you're doing. So they go through training, they pass it or whatever the qualifier is there, and they get added to a security group of people who can use this feature, right? Because it is nice that you can use the feature even if you're unlicensed, and you can get to the point where you can take a screenshot and manipulate it a little bit. But if you can't save it and you can't publish it, it feels kind of meh, right? It's not as exciting. So rather than have people go through that and get frustrated, you could do some training, right? And say, hey, this is why you can't publish. If you would like to be able to publish, here's the steps that you need to take. We'll get you a license and we'll drop you in this security group. All right, so you can limit the whole organization or by specific groups.
Nate, you have 2 questions here. Sure. In the chat. We have Martin Warren. Can you change the frequency of a publish date, for example, update every 10 minutes? Yeah, so unfortunately you can't. That's a great question though, because you may know, I imagine the person who's asking may use the Power BI service already. So let me show you on an existing, I don't have any. Okay, let me publish one real fast. Here, we'll do the sample. Or actually, hold on. I think there's one in the workspace. There we go. All right. So in the Power BI service, if you have reports published here where they're collected and it's beyond SharePoint list, you can set up automatic refresh. Here we're going to schedule refresh. Oop, yeah, I want to take over. There we go. All right, so it's all grayed out now because I'd have to configure some more stuff. And it does have requirements before you can do this, like the data does have to be able to be connected to. If it's on-prem, you need an on-premises data gateway to be able to get to it. It has to be always on, right? So that's a little trickier, and that's often why this would be disabled. But if you're connecting to data in SharePoint or any other cloud location, this should already be able to be used. So it's not a big deal for those of you who are entirely in the cloud. But for scheduled refresh, you're able to turn that on, and then you can actually set a schedule here up to 8 times a day. So you could say
every hour during these specific hours, and you can customize it that way. But that's only for reports that you're building in Power BI Desktop, that app I mentioned at the beginning. You publish it to the service, whether it's in your personal workspace or like Megan just found, she has a workspace for one of her teams, the Market Project team. Either of those places that she publishes to, she can then benefit from that customizable schedule. But yeah, with the list integration, unfortunately, it is locked down to 3 hours and we can't control when that starts or when it goes. But that's a great question. Thank you for that.
And next, is there a way to capture historical data, such as snapshots and time metrics?
There is not. So one thing you might want to do is consider, just taking screenshots. So we can also go into edit and see if it gives us like a download. Yeah, there's a print and a save here, but I think save is just going to save to the list. Let me go to one that's published here. There we go. So save a copy of the report, save the report. Let me try those out, but I think that one just saves to the list. Save as, we'll save to the list. Okay. And then print. So yeah, your only options are really screenshotting and printing. It looks like in printing, I bet is just the browser print. Yeah.
And finally, is the Power BI services also available to use with SharePoint document libraries with the scenario if we can have reports that show page view counts?
Gotcha. Yes, I'm not sure about your page views, but let me show you in a document library. If you go up to the top, and I'm actually going to zoom out a little because you don't normally have to click anything extra like the ellipsis. But if you don't see integrate, like I had my screen 2 zoomed in, just click on the ellipsis and then look for integrate. But now I can see it. I'm going to click on it, go to Power BI, visualize the library. Little term change there. Let's see what we get here. Awesome. So count of shared documents by modified by. Nice. So Megan's sharing the most. We've got modified over time, shared documents by day. Yeah, I'm not seeing specific file views, unfortunately. Let's see. Let me look at IDs, see if we get anything specific. Yeah, so it doesn't look like we're getting too granular here, but this is still helpful, just knowing like how many shared documents do we have and when are people modifying them?
And also from Adam, would a slicer function help to take a metric snapshot?
Yeah, so if you want to use the slicer, let's see. So let me go into this report and I'm already in edit mode. So for those of you who don't know, the slicer is another visual option, and I'll throw one on here. There, if I can unselect everything. There we go. So the slicer, where is that? Here it is. Slicer kind of looks like a funnel on there, and I'm going to resize that so it fits a little better. Here we go. And remember earlier what I was doing was I was clicking on part of the report and it filtered the rest of the report. That's kind of what a slicer is going to do, but rather than having to know that you can actually click on part of a visual to do something like that, you can make it really easy for users by adding slicers, which we're more familiar with just kind of inherently. So with that, I might say I want to create this on-track slicer where people can just simply, and it's kind of too small there. Let me make this a little bigger. There we go. But notice I can just use checkboxes too and say, I just want to see the on-track stuff. I just want to see the not on-track stuff, right? Maybe instead of on track, it's by requester where you are one of the people who are requesting and you just want to see your stuff. Or I could say, I'm Adele. I click on Adele. Here's my report, the stuff that I've requested. And with the slicer, I really do like that one because you can also change it from this never-ending list, which is kind of hard to fit if it's dynamic like this, into a drop-down, which will always fit, right? Because then it's only going to take up one row. You expand it, find yourself, select yourself, collapse it, and you're good, right? So I'm looking at my individual report. Imagine that with departments, right? If it's a date or something, you can do that with a slider instead of a check mark. Let me change that to between. There we go. And I can say, I just want to see data between these dates, right? So thinking about your historical snapshot, yeah, that's a great suggestion for that. The only thing with that is that, changes over time, like version history won't show up. For example, like if you change the project status from, in progress to completed, you're not going to be able to go back and see, oh, that's when it was in progress, or that's when it was completed. You'll only be able to see the current status of it.
And for JP, this recording will be sent out to our mailing list within 48 hours of the presentation. It's also streamed to YouTube as well.
Awesome. Yeah, those are really great questions. Thank you, everybody. So something else, Shadid, I don't know if we can send this out with the recording perhaps, but I have a list of resources here that I'd like to share with everybody. And I might be able to drop them in the chat here. Let me try this real quick, see if it supports hyperlinks. Nope. Okay.
Well, the chat does not support, let's say if you copied it, it won't hyperlink, but if you email them to me after, I'll definitely make sure it's included within the body of the email itself.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, when you get that email, just check out these links. I picked out some that I think will be really helpful for those of you who are maybe just getting started with this concept. The very first one will kind of walk you through the steps that I did today. Those of you who are admins, this will be a deeper dive into the Power BI admin portal and understanding all the different options that you have there. Those of you who want to dive into just Power BI in general and learn the desktop app as well as the rest of the components, this Power BI learning overview is really helpful. Those of you who are wanting to be on the cutting edge and know what's coming next for Power BI, including things like this integration feature, you'll be interested in the roadmap filtered to Power BI to be able to see like what's coming this quarter. In fact, they have a really handy resource just for Power BI that shows like, I think it's a half a year at a time of stuff that's coming. And it's fascinating. For example, they put out something recently for September of this year where they're planning on making it easier to create reports from the service. So in addition to just being able to copy and paste data or use an existing data set, you're also going to be able to choose, I want to say it was Excel, and I'm going to get the next one wrong. It might have been Access, but that doesn't sound right. And I think PDF was an option too. So they're adding to the functionality of the cloud-only version of Power BI, making it less and less necessary to use the desktop app here. Of course, you'll still want to use desktop for your heavy stuff, but gives you an idea. All right, and then of course the Power BI YouTube channel, that's a great resource. And then remember, I'm not a licensing expert, but this pricing and product comparison will help you out for those of you who maybe don't have the license and are interested in getting it, or just want to see like, what can I do with what I already have? That'll be helpful. And with that, I just want to thank everybody, and I'll stick around for as long as you have questions.
Any questions, please put them in the chat. Also, as you can see, Nate has included his LinkedIn profile. What I would request that you do is that you go to the LinkedIn profile and leave a recommendation about your impression of the presentation. So some suggestions on what you can add are key takeaways, one thing you learned, one thing you would try when you go back to work. And so those are all ways that you can help Nate to deliver more presentations, because everyone looks at LinkedIn these days. So if you enjoyed the presentation, go to the link within the graphic here and leave your feedback, please.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Any questions? And Nate, make sure, okay, here's one. Is there a way to duplicate data or the visualization chart, or do you have to create from scratch every year?
Yeah, great question. So if I go out here to my existing report, right, and I've got it saved, I'll go ahead and publish here. And the question is, do I have to recreate this every time, or could I put different filters on this one and maybe have one that's really similar and not have to tweak everything like I did this time? So my first recommendation is, if you want this to maybe be, let's call this one like 2021, right? We're gonna have a 2021 report and we're gonna filter to 2021. Now, if I go to File, I can choose Save As and call this one 2022, publish it, and then of course I want to adjust my filters. Right, so now I'm using the 2022 one. I filter my dates perhaps on this panel here or in the specific visuals where it's relevant, and then publish again, right? So I can create those separate reports just using that Save As functionality. Now, when it comes to visuals, let me shorten this one a little bit. Oop, make my panel bigger. It's really particular. There we go. All right, I'll make that smaller again. Okay. So I've got my visual selected, and you can just use your keyboard and do a Control-C when it's selected. click where you want it, or, just outside of the visual, and Control V, and then you've got 2. So yeah, that'll help you with all the customizations. Like I changed the colors. I might've changed all the details about it, the font sizes. I don't want to do that twice. So do it once, use Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Great question.
Yes, Nick, make sure you save the chat so that once the session ends, you can have these questions in a text file that can, of course, help you with feedback for your presentation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Well, okay, any final questions? Final questions. There's great feedback about your presentation within the chat as well.
Oh yeah. Thanks for all the kind words, everybody. That's great.
Okay, on behalf of the Nate Chamberlain, Kansas City's finest, this has been another Baltimore SharePoint Users Group experience. Join us next month for more Microsoft-focused content, community, and more. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.